Title: The horse wasn't mine, it belonged to something else. It started with the sound of hooves on gravel. Slow, deliberate, and far too close to my cabin for comfort. The nearest neighbor lived 8 miles away, and no one in these parts kept horses anymore. I stepped away from the crackling fire barefoot, the cold wooden floor biting into my skin, and stared through the rain-dotted window into the fog. The sound stopped. Nothing. Just the hiss of rain and the dying whisper of wind between the trees. I told myself it was in my head. A branch. An animal. A remnant of the ghost stories my grandfather used to tell when I was a boy. Always about the forest. Always about something that watched. I didn't see the horse that night, but I heard it again the next day. I was chopping wood behind the cabin, the axe sinking into the thick stump with a satisfying thud when I felt a presence. Not a sound this time, but that weird hum in your bones when you know you're not alone. I turned, and there it was, a black horse, taller than any I'd seen. Coat slick like ink, almost too dark to be real, and its eyes, they were wrong. Not red, not glowing, nothing cliché like that. Just empty, like holes in space. It stood still, silent, as if it had always been there, watching. I blinked once, and it was gone. I didn't see it leave. I didn't hear it move. Just gone. I didn't tell anyone. Who would I tell? I was out here to get away from people, from noise, from the clutter of city life. That's why I bought this old cabin in the middle of nowhere. Peace. Solitude. But peace doesn't watch you from the tree line. That night, I locked the door. Not just the knob, but the deadbolt, too. I placed a chair under the handle like some desperate cliché. I told myself it was the wind making me paranoid. I left the light on. At exactly 3:13 a.m., I heard it again, hooves on gravel. Only this time, they didn't stop outside. They circled the cabin. Slow, measured, the heavy clomp of weight pressing into wet stone. Once, twice, 3 full rotations. Then silence. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. By morning, I had half a mind to pack up and leave. But leaving would mean admitting fear, and I've never been the type to run. I'm a rational man, logical. I don't believe in hauntings or monsters in the woods. So instead of leaving, I followed the tracks. I found them behind the house, pressed deep into the soaked gravel. Hooves too large to belong to any normal horse. And the strangest part? No approach. No departure. Just the prints circling the cabin like it had emerged from the air, walked around, and vanished again. I followed the trail into the forest. For an hour, I moved between thick pine and fallen logs, ducking through moss and thorn, until I reached the clearing. That's when I saw it. The barn. It shouldn't have been there. I'd explored these woods dozens of times and never seen it before. Old, crumbling, covered in ivy and mold, like it had been abandoned for decades, but not forgotten. The wood smelled damp, almost rotten, but the structure stood firm. There were symbols carved into the beams. Strange circular markings, patterns that hurt to look at for too long. I stepped inside, and the smell hit me. Not rot, not death. Worse. A kind of wrongness, like the scent of burnt hair and wet iron. My stomach turned, and my eyes adjusted to the dim interior. Inside the barn there were no stalls. Just a wide, circular pit in the center of the floor, surrounded by black candles. Burned down but still warm. Chains hung from the ceiling. Hooks. And in the corner, a saddle. It looked fresh. The leather supple, the metal clasps polished, not rusted like everything else. And then I saw the name burned into the side. Warren. My name. I stumbled back, heart pounding. The barn groaned behind me, and I ran. I didn't look back until I reached the cabin. I didn't sleep that night either. I locked every window. I pushed the couch against the door. I sat with my back to the fireplace. Clutching the rusted hunting rifle I found in the shed when I first moved in, though I'd never fired it. But it didn't matter, because the next morning, the horse was there again, standing in my driveway, closer. Its hooves steamed against the frost, its mane tangled with what looked like branches, or bones, something pale and brittle woven through the strands. I opened the door hard in my throat. It didn't move. I took a single step forward, and it turned its head, finally acknowledging me. Its eyes met mine. Not empty this time. Alive. Too alive. Something conscious looked back at me from behind that equine skull, and then it spoke, not with a voice, not with sound, with thought. You were called. I stumbled back, slamming the door. I didn't see it again that day, but I didn't leave either. Something rooted me here, like the forest had closed in. The next night, I awoke to the sound of something scratching the door. Not claws, not nails, hooves. Scrape, scrape, scrape. I stayed quiet. Breath held. Then I heard the whisper, not through the walls. In my head, he rode me. Now you must. I stood frozen, my mind scrambling for sense. Then something heavy fell on the porch, like a body. I opened the door just enough to look outside. A deer, dead, its throat slashed open, its eyes wide and glassy. Next to it, a saddle, my saddle, burned with my name again. I didn't put it there. That was 3 days ago. Since then, the horse has appeared every night. Closer, sometimes at the window. Sometimes I hear on the roof. Sometimes I hear breathing in the walls. And the barn, it's not in the woods anymore. It's behind my cabin now. I never saw it move. I just woke up one morning and it was there. Closer. The pit inside is glowing now. Faintly, like coals in a dying fire. And something is rising from it. I know it's waiting for me. And I know the horse isn't just a horse. It never was. It belongs to something else. And soon, so will I. The sky hadn't turned blue in 2 days. Just that same gray mass hovering low over the trees, like it wanted to suffocate the forest. I hadn't left the cabin since the deer incident. The saddle was still out there, resting on the porch like a curse waiting to be claimed. Every time I passed a window, I swore it had moved an inch closer to the door. Last night, I bolted the window shut with planks and nails. The old floorboards creaked constantly beneath my feet, even when I stood still, like something underneath was shifting, watching. I barely ate. I barely slept. Then the power went out. I thought it was a blown fuse. But when I checked the box, all the switches were down, snapped like someone had forced them. I stood in the dark, holding a flashlight, waiting for something to move behind me. Every breath felt loud, too loud. I turned back toward the living room, and the front door was open. The wind hadn't done it. I locked that door, chained it, blocked it. I stepped forward slowly. The flashlight beam shook with my hand. The saddle was gone. So was the deer carcass. But the hoof prints, they led into the house now. I followed them. They tracked dirt and water across the floorboards, into the hallway, into my bedroom. The bed had been turned, not just disturbed, rotated, as if something massive had spun it with one hand. The window was shattered, but the glass lay outside on the ground below. Whatever entered had come through it. I backed out of the room. Then I heard it. Not hooves. Breathing. Slow. Wet, like lungs filled with mud. Coming from the attic. The hatch above me creaked. I aimed the flashlight at the square in the ceiling. Dust drifted down like it was snowing inside the house. The pole cord swayed even though there was no breeze. And then something pulled it down. The ladder unfolded itself like an invitation. I stepped back. Something dripped from the top rung. Dark. Sticky. It hit the floor and spread like oil. I wanted to run. I should have. But I climbed instead. I couldn't stop myself. Each step groaned louder than the last. The attic was pitch black. My flashlight flickered the moment I reached the top, then something moved in the corner. I turned the light. The saddle was there, set upright, polished, ready. Behind it, barely visible, bones, a rib cage, a skull, horse-shaped but wrong, elongated, cracked in places where no living thing could survive. And from the back corner came the whisper again. Ride. The attic floor split open beneath me. Not literally, but it felt like gravity itself flipped. I tumbled backward, hit the ladder, rolled down, landed on the hallway floor. The flashlight broke. I crawled away, chest heaving, and slammed the bedroom door shut. I didn't know why that room felt safer. It just did. I shoved the dresser in front of the door and sat against the wall, staring at the window. That's when I saw it. The barn had changed. The pit inside now glowed red, bright, pulsing like a heart, and something was crawling out. First the hooves, then the legs, then the full shape. It wasn't a horse. Not anymore. Its body bent the wrong way in the middle. Its neck stretched too far, spine ridged like it had too many bones. Its mouth open, not to neigh, but to laugh. Not human laughter, not even animal. Something in between. It turned toward the cabin and charged. I didn't see it reach the cabin. I don't even remember falling asleep. But when I woke up, the front door was shut again. The saddle sat calmly on the living room floor, and the clock read 3:13. I don't know if it was the same night or the next. Time doesn't move right anymore. I opened the door and screamed into the trees. "What do you want from me?" The answer came immediately. A whisper from inside my own chest. "You were named. You were chosen. You were bred." That's when I remembered the stories. My grandfather. He never told them like fiction. He always said the woods were older than time, that there were things buried here long before we walked upright, that our family had a connection to this place. He used to say, "One day, the ground will call your blood home." I thought he was drunk. I didn't think it was literal. I didn't think the call would come in the form of a beast with no name and eyes like holes in existence. The next day, I heard chanting, not from the forest, from the walls. Low, rhythmic, repeating syllables that didn't belong in any language. Every time I tried to record it, the device fried, batteries melted, screens cracked. At dusk, I walked out the barn. I don't remember choosing to. My legs just moved. The pit was deeper now. Steam poured out of it, and something metallic ticked at the bottom like chains tightening. I leaned over the edge and saw myself, standing in the pit, staring up at me, bleeding from the eyes. He smiled and whispered, almost ready. I ran, but the cabin didn't lead home anymore. Every window now looked out on the barn. Every door opened to the pit. I was trapped. That night, I burned the saddle. I poured gasoline over it and lit a match. It didn't burn. It screamed, high-pitched, shrill, like metal being torn in half. The fire went around it, refused to touch it. The flames spread to the walls. The cabin caught fire. I ran outside into the woods, but the trees were wrong now, tall and close, like they'd moved overnight. The moon above me was black, a hole in the sky. I ran until I couldn't breathe, and still I heard behind me the clop of hooves, but not one set. Many, they surrounded me. Shadows flickered between trees, tall riders, boneless, cloaked in smoke and ash, all mounted on creatures that looked like horses, but moved like spiders. And in the center, the one I'd seen first, my horse. It stepped forward, kneeled, offered itself, and I climbed on, not because I wanted to, because I had to. The moment I touched the saddle, I felt it. Something in me broke open, something that was waiting. My skin burned, my eyes blurred. I screamed. It wasn't my voice anymore. I rode into the pit, into the fire, into the thing that called itself older than death. I awoke in the middle of a vast, ash-covered field. The sky above was not sky, but a shifting canvas of smoke and flame, like someone pulled the lid off hell and let the embers swirl free. My skin tingled with cold and heat at the same time. I wasn't sure if I was alive anymore, or dreaming, or if I had crossed into something else entirely. The horse stood beside me. Its body was no longer smooth or solid. It pulsed, like a beating organ wrapped in sinew and bone. Its eyes glowed, not with light, but with awareness. I tried to speak, but my throat was dry, and when I moved my lips, all that came out was a rasping whisper that didn't feel like words. And yet it understood. It turned its head toward the horizon. Something moved there. A tower, impossibly tall, rose in the field, built from wood that bled and stone that pulsed with veins. At the top, I saw fire. Not fire that burned, but fire that watched. a lidless eye of flame, and I knew, with sudden clarity, that this was what it wanted me to see. Not the barn, not the pit, not the horse, but the tower. The tower was the heart of it, the center of what called itself older than man, older than the forest, older than time. I felt my feet move again, unbidden. I mounted the horse, no saddle needed now. I was no longer resisting. I was part of it, a rider chosen long before my birth. My family had been running from this inheritance for generations, but I was the last, and I had stopped running. As the horse galloped across the field, the world blurred around me. Shapes rose from the ash, others like me, other riders, each with their own beast. Their faces were hollow, some skeletal, some veiled, but they rode with fury and grace. They followed me as if I were leading them, and maybe I was. The tower grew closer with each hoofbeat. I heard voices, dozens, then hundreds, all layered on top of each other, whispering things in languages I had no name for. I understood them anyway. War and rides. The gate opens. The breach awakens. We reached the base of the tower. The ground cracked beneath us. Ash gave way to stone. A spiral stairway emerged, not built but grown, formed from roots that bled black sap and writhed when touched. The horse stopped. It couldn't go further. I slid off, legs trembling. My hands were no longer mine. The veins pulsed black under the skin, like something else had taken root inside me. And still I climbed. Step by step, I ascended the living stairs. With each step, memories bled from my head. I forgot my mother's face, then my first kiss, then my name. The tower took pieces of me in exchange for passage. I reached the top and found the room, a circular chamber of mirrors, each reflecting not me, but versions of me, twisted, burned, hung drowned, in one. I wore a crown of antlers and sat on a throne of skulls. In the center of the room, a man stood, but he wasn't a man. He had my face. His smile was carved too wide. His eyes were bleeding. He spoke. "Warren died days ago," he said. "You were his shape now, but you are mine. I tried to move, but my legs refused. You were born in the bloodline of the riders. You dreamt of peace, but peace is a lie we tell cattle before the slaughter. You wanted solitude. You called it a cabin in the woods. But solitude is our cathedral. Silence is our prayer." He pointed behind me. I turned and saw the pit again. It had followed me. Impossible, but it was there, floating in the air beyond the tower wall. The red glow pulsed like a heartbeat. He stepped forward and placed something cold into my hand. A bridle, made of human teeth. "You belong to the beast now," he said, "and it to you." Then the mirrors shattered. The force threw me backward. I fell out of the tower, into the pit, down, down, down. But I didn't land. I woke up in a cabin, as if none of it had happened. Sunlight streamed through the window. The deer was gone. The saddle was gone. No hoof prints. No chanting. Just me, in my bed. For a moment, I thought it had all been a nightmare, a fever dream born from isolation and a guilty subconscious. I even laughed, but then I saw the mark, branded into my chest. A horseshoe, upside down, burned deep into the flesh. And on the nightstand, a note, "Ride again, soon." My hands shook as I held it. I checked the window. The barn was gone. No sign of the pit. No scent of rot. But I knew better. They weren't gone. Just waiting. Waiting for the next ride. Waiting for me to answer. And I would, because I couldn't resist anymore. Because I didn't want to. It began again that night. Not with sound, but with stillness. The kind of quiet that pushes on your ears, that feels wrong in your bones. No wind. No insects. No crack of trees. Just silence like the world was holding its breath. I sat on the porch, gripping a cup of black coffee that had long since gone cold. My eyes kept drifting toward the clearing. There was no barn there anymore, but I could feel its shape, like an imprint in my vision, a phantom limb of the landscape. The brand on my chest itched. It burned every time I exhaled. I didn't touch it. I didn't have to. I knew what it meant now. I belonged to something, and that something was calling again. At 3:13 a.m., I heard hooves. They didn't echo like before. They thudded, deep and muffled, as if pounding on flesh instead of soil. I looked out into the dark, and the trees parted, not physically, but perceptually, like they allowed my eyes to see through them. There it was, the horse. But not just one. 5 now, each rider dressed in what looked like rotted Civil War uniforms. Faces blurred. Not hidden, just wrong. Like trying to look at something you weren't allowed to understand. In the center, my horse. It bowed its grotesque head. And I knew I had no choice. There was no refusal. No later. The time had come. The coffee cup slipped from my hand, shattered on the porch. I walked barefoot across the cold earth. I didn't feel the stones. I didn't feel the chill. All I felt was a growing hunger in my chest, like something inside me wanted to run, to gallop, to tear across dimensions. The saddle was on the horse now. New, black leather, too smooth to be made by human hands. It pulsed faintly, breathed. I climbed on. The moment I settled, everything went dark. No wind, no sound, no sight. Then light, but not the sun. It was fire, walls of it, circling, spinning. The world around me had changed again. A burning canyon, its walls pulsing like muscle. Above, a blood-red sky swirled, pierced by black spires like thorns on a rose stem. Below, the canyon floor writhed with hands, just hands, reaching from beneath the cracked stone. The riders surrounded me again, but this time they bowed their heads. To me, a voice rose from below, 1,000 voices layered, folding over each other like echoes from a collapsed cathedral. He returns, the chosen, the fallen rider, the gate breaker. The canyon cracked. Something huge rose from the depths. I couldn't comprehend its shape. It was constantly changing, horse, man, serpent, shadow. It had no eyes, but I felt it watching. It had no mouth, but it spoke inside my bones. Ride. I kicked the beast beneath me, if it even needed that, and it ran, not forward, up. We raced through the air between fire and sky, the riders behind me, the world around us burning, folding, reshaping. I didn't steer. I didn't need to. The horse knew where we were going. The breach. I saw it ahead. A split in the sky itself. A tear in reality, jagged and alive. Screams poured from it. Not of pain, but joyful madness. The kind of sound that makes you grin while you cry. The kind that scrapes your sanity raw. We reached the edge. Time stopped. I saw everything all at once. Myself as a boy, riding a pony. Myself as a man, burying my father. Myself as a corpse, hanging from a tree made of teeth. Myself as a king, crowned by shadows. Myself as the beast, galloping across universes. And then I was through. The breach swallowed us. The world behind melted. The world ahead formed. A village. Quiet. Quaint. Modern. Children played in the streets. Old men. Water gardens. Church bells rang in the distance. Normal. Ordinary. But I saw it. The shimmer. The falsehood. This place wasn't real. It was a hunting ground. And I was no longer just the hunted. I was the lead. The front rider. The one who chooses who gets taken. I walked the streets, unseen. The others followed behind me, shadows on the sidewalk. We passed windows and turned reflections black. We passed dogs and made them howl. We walked beneath street lamps and made them flicker into darkness. No one noticed, except her, a girl, maybe 12, standing on her front lawn, holding a stuffed horse. She looked right at me, not through, not past, at. Her lips parted. Her eyes widened. She saw everything. She dropped the toy. It landed with a soft thud. I stepped toward her. She didn't run. She whispered, "You're not supposed to be here yet." I stopped. A memory jolted through me. Her face. Familiar. Too familiar. She looked like my sister. But my sister died in the woods. When I was 7. Eaten. Or taken. Or something in between. The girl backed away, eyes wide. The other riders started to close in. I raised my hand. They froze. The girl whispered, "Don't do this. You can stop." I couldn't speak. The words wouldn't come. But something shifted in my chest. A tremor, a pulse, a choice. I turned away, walked back to the center of the street, raised both arms. The riders circled me, and I spoke, not with voice but with fire, smoke, bone. "This place is not ready, but it will be." Then we vanished. The breach closed behind us, and the village forgot, all except the girl. I don't know how long it's been since we rode through the breach. Time doesn't behave the same way here. Sometimes I feel like only seconds pass between worlds. Other times, entire centuries grind by while I blink. The horse no longer sleeps. Neither do I, not in the way humans understand rest. I dream now while awake, and in those dreams, I see doors, hundreds of them, each one leading to a place untouched by this thing inside me. But we always come back, always return. To the list. There's a list, carved into my mind like commandments etched into bone. Names, places, times. I never wrote them. I never learned them. But I know them. Tonight, it led us to another cabin. This one wasn't mine. It stood at the edge of a fog-drenched marsh, its windows glowing faintly through the mist like eyes of a dying animal. An old man lived inside. He didn't deserve what came next, but deserving never mattered. I dismounted without a sound. The others stayed behind me, cloaked in the darkness between the trees. I walked to the door and knocked once. The man opened it, startled but unafraid. He looked up at me and paused. "You," he said. I didn't reply. He nodded. I wondered how long it would take. He turned his back and walked inside. I followed. The walls were lined with books. Not normal ones, journals hand-bound with twine and skin. Drawings filled the pages. Horses, demons, riders, the tower. He had seen it all. "You don't remember me," he said, lighting a lantern. "But I knew your grandfather. Rode with him once." I froze. He was a good man. Tried to fight it. Tried to stop the breach. But it's not something you can kill. Not something you can even understand. He turned to face me. "I don't blame you." I felt my hand twitch. Not of my own will. The beast inside me wanted blood. But the man just smiled, resigned. "It's not you. It's what you carry." He reached into a drawer and pulled out a small brass key. I kept this. Didn't know why. Until now. He placed it in my palm. Suddenly, everything shifted. The room dissolved. The marsh vanished. I stood on a narrow stone path that led into the void. No up, no down, just endlessness. The key shimmered in my hand, and I knew this was a way out, a way to break the bond, to return the horse, to become human again. I could feel the beast inside me scream. It recoiled. It hated the key. The other riders appeared behind me, their mouths open in silent rage. They knew, and they were afraid. For the first time, they feared me. I stepped toward the keyhole that had formed from the darkness itself. My heart pounded. I raised the key. Then the girl appeared, the same one from the village. She stood in front of the keyhole, crying. "No," she whispered. "If you close it, they'll just find someone else." I hesitated. "What do I do?" I asked, voice cracking. She looked up at me with those ancient eyes, and she said, "You ride, but not for them. Not for the breach, not for the tower, for the forgotten, for the ones already taken." My mind exploded with images, souls lost in darkness, mind shattered by the call, people half-possessed, trapped between planes, victims, not of the horse, of the void that sent it. If I returned the horse, the cycle would start over. But if I kept it, commanded it, I could rewrite the rules, reclaim the path. I clenched the key in my fist and turned away from the lock. The girl smiled faintly. The darkness screamed. I mounted the horse once more. The others watched in confusion. I didn't ride into the breach. I rode against it, straight toward the tower, straight toward the fire, toward the source. It tried to stop me. Time bent. The air thickened. My vision blurred. But I kept riding until I reached the gates. They opened without a sound, and I rode inside. The tower's heart was a throne room made of bone and memory. In its center sat the thing that had once warmed my face. It rose, snarled. You were mine. I drew the key. It burned like lightning in my grip. You were never mine, I said, and I drove the key into the earth. The tower cracked. The horse reared, screaming like a god dying. The breach began to close. The riders fell to their knees. The mirror man screamed as the skin peeled away, revealing nothing beneath, just void. And then, silence, real silence, the kind I hadn't known in years. I stood alone on a flat plain. No tower, no horse, no riders, just me. The brand on my chest was gone. I was free, but I knew something else had ridden in with me, and someday it might ride again, because the horse was never truly mine. It belonged to something else, and that something still waits. I should have died in that tower, or maybe I did, in one version of me, in one strand of time that snapped the moment I drove the key into the ground. But something had changed. When I woke up, I wasn't in the cabin. I wasn't even on Earth. The sky above me was a dull gray canvas smeared with black cracks, like the world was bleeding light. The ground was soft, but not dirt, more like flesh that pulsed beneath my feet. Every step I took sent a ripple through the terrain, as though the world itself resented my presence. I was alone, or so I thought, until I heard the breathing. Not behind me, inside me. It wasn't mine. It was slow, deep, like a beast asleep in the hollow of my bones. I fell to my knees, hands pressing against the warm, sponge-like ground. I tried to scream, but all that came out was mist. My voice was gone. My identity was foggy. The memories of the tower, the girl, the riders, they hovered just out of reach. Then I saw it, the horse, but not the one I had ridden. This one was white, pure, glowing. But when I looked into its eyes, they were mirrors. I saw myself, twisted, split, riding the black horse, fire in my mouth, shadows growing from my back. I stumbled away, heart racing. The white horse didn't move. It watched, then it whispered without speaking. Balance must be kept. You took from the void. You owe it a debt. A doorway opened behind it, floating, spinning, breathing. I didn't want to step through it, but the ground beneath me cracked, and I had no choice. It pulled me in. The world changed again. Now, I stood in a city I didn't recognize. Skyscrapers loomed overhead, bent at impossible angles. Roads bled oil. Cars sat still, abandoned mid-motion. There were no people, only echoes, whispers, crying, and horses, dozens of them, tied to poles, pacing alleys, standing silently on rooftops. Each had no rider. Yet, that's when I understood this wasn't the world I came from. It was a gathering place, a waiting room for riders yet to awaken, and the beast inside me, it was still choosing. The moment I realized it, I felt the pressure return in my chest. The breathing grew faster, hungrier. It wanted me back in the saddle, but I didn't want to ride. I wanted to resist. I ran through the streets, past the glass buildings that showed things that weren't real. Children with no faces, dogs with eyes like voids, trees that screamed when the wind blew. Everywhere I turned, the city shifted behind me. Blocks I'd passed were rearranged. Doors I'd walked through vanished. I was being toyed with, herded, and then I saw him, standing at the center of an intersection. The man with my face. Again. But this time, he wasn't smiling. He looked tired. You shouldn't have done that, he said. I ended it. I replied, unsure if I even had a mouth here. He shook his head. You closed the gate. Not the gate. He stepped forward. With each step, his image fractured, splitting into hundreds of versions of me. All the ways I'd almost turned. All the paths I never took. You think you were the only one to ride, he said. We all did. We all fell, over and over. And every time one of us breaks a cycle, another begins it. I backed away, but behind me now stood the black horse. Returned. No bridle. No saddle. Just watching. Waiting. They won't stop, the mirror man said. The void is patient. It doesn't want a king. It wants a gatekeeper. Someone to hold the reins until it finds the next one. I'm not yours, I said, voice shaking. No, he said, but you're not free either. He raised his hand, and the city trembled. Buildings collapsed. The horses screamed. The ground opened wide, and I fell again, into dark, into cold, into memory. I landed back in my childhood, my old house, the field behind it, the swing set, the smell of cut grass, and my sister. She was there, alive, laughing, waving at me. My throat closed. I stepped toward her, and time slowed. My legs moved like I was underwater. The air grew thick. Then I noticed the horse was in the background, the black one, watching her, waiting. I screamed, ran, but I was too late. It lunged, and everything went red. When I opened my eyes, I was back in the void city, alone, breathing heavy. The horse was beside me, chained now, restrained, and a note burned into the wall beside it. You broke one rule. The rest are waiting. The beast inside me laughed, because even though I had tried to break free, I was still riding, and I hadn't even seen the Real Gate yet. I stopped asking where I was a long time ago. The truth is, place doesn't matter here. Not like it used to. The world shifts according to memory, trauma, hunger. I don't walk through streets anymore. I walk through my past, through other people's nightmares, through doors that should have stayed shut. And always, the horse follows, not galloping, not neighing, just walking. Behind me, hooves silent, breath cold. It waits, like it knows I'll eventually return to the saddle. I haven't yet, but I'm wearing thin. The city was gone now. What replaced it was a carnival, abandoned, rusted, but somehow still alive. The lights flickered with no power. The carousel spun slowly, though no wind blew. And in the distance, the Ferris wheel turned with a groaning sound like a dying whale. And there were children, dozens of them, but not right. Their faces blurred, smeared like wet paint. Their bodies were rigid, moving in loops, laughing, running, disappearing, and then appearing again. The loop reset every 30 seconds. I stood still, counting them, watching, until I saw her, the girl from the village. Again, only this time, she wasn't child. She was older, worn. Her eyes held centuries of sadness. She stood at the entrance of the funhouse mirror hall. "You're losing yourself," she said before I could speak. I already did. "No," she whispered. "Not completely. That's why it wants you. You're the only one it couldn't fully break. What is this place?" I asked. She turned her gaze to the carnival. "A reflection," she said. "This is where the riders are tested. Before they mount. Before they give in." I looked at the black horse now, tied to one of the carousel poles, blending into the shadows. It was smiling. The girl led me toward the mirrors. I hesitated. "You don't have to go in," she said, "but you'll never understand if you don't." So I followed her. Inside was worse than I imagined. Each mirror showed me, not as I am, but as I was. My first ride on a horse. The night I heard the scream in the forest. The day I opened the box in the attic and found the leather brand inside. The moment I saw my grandfather hang himself, mouth sewn shut, eyes gouged, but his hands holding the same reins I would one day carry. Then the mirrors changed. They didn't show me anymore. They showed the others. The riders who came before. One was a Roman soldier. Another, a plague doctor from the 1600s. A third, a woman in a World War I uniform, screaming into the void as a horse tore a battlefield apart beneath her. Each one ended the same. The mirror shattered, and another rider took their place. "Why are you showing me this?" I asked the girl. She looked at me with a sadness I can't describe. "Because you might be the last." The air grew heavy. The ground trembled. I stepped back from the mirrors, and the hallway collapsed behind me. Only the final mirror remained. Black glass. No reflection. But I could hear breathing behind it. Mine. And its. I reached out. My fingers touched the glass, and it turned to liquid. I fell through. The world turned inside out. And I found myself standing in front of the tower again. But it was alive this time, pulsing like a heart. The doors opened by themselves. I was expected. I entered. Inside, the air was thick with ash and whispers. Thousands of whispers. I walked a long hallway where the walls were made of teeth. The ground beneath me became hair. And at the end of the hall, the throne, empty, waiting. And beside it, the white horse. Its eyes were dim now, almost dead. I thought you were with them, I said. The horse looked at me and spoke. We were never on opposite sides. We were both sent to see what you would become. I didn't understand. But then the black horse appeared, riderless. It knelt before the throne, and I felt the pressure again. The call. I could sit, end the chaos, take control, be the last rider, the one to seal the breach forever. But the girl's voice echoed in my mind. If you seal it, another will open. I turned from the throne, refused a seat, and the tower screamed. Walls shook. Fire poured from cracks in the ceiling. The horses reared, both of them, the white and the black. And in their screams I heard the truth. There was never meant to be a final rider. Only hosts. The breach didn't want a king. It wanted a vessel. And I'd rejected it, so it gave me a new gift. Pain. Blinding, soul-shattering pain. My vision went red. My body collapsed. And when I awoke, I was back in the first cabin. My cabin, where it all began. Except there were hoof prints in the floorboards, leading out the door, and the whisper of breathing, still inside me, growing, waiting. I didn't leave the cabin for days. Couldn't, not because something held me back, but because the outside had changed. The sky was wrong. It was too low, like a ceiling made of stretched leather, twitching sometimes, rippling when the wind moved. The forest wasn't green anymore. It was red, not blood red, something deeper, something raw. The trees bent inward like they were listening. The hoof prints on my floor never faded. They burned themselves into the wood, glowing faintly at night, pulsing like a heartbeat. Sometimes I'd wake up and hear them echoing. The steps, slow, deliberate, but when I opened the door, nothing, until the third night. That's when it returned. The black horse. It stood at the edge of the clearing, not moving, just waiting. But it wasn't alone. The girl was there too, older again. Her skin cracked like bark, her hair floating upward like smoke in reverse. Why did you come back? I asked. You never left, she answered. She stepped closer, her feet not touching the ground. This isn't your cabin anymore. It never was. It was a waiting room. For what? She smiled, sadly. For your turn. I already rode. No, she said. You refused. And then I felt it, the pressure return. Not on my chest this time, but in my head, like thoughts that weren't mine were trying to crawl inside. Visions flashed. A city burning with no sound. A field filled with faceless children, all riding eyeless horses. A door inside a dream, with my name written in ash. I grabbed my head and screamed. The girl touched my shoulder, and instantly everything went still. I gasped for air. Why me? I whispered. She paused. Because you were the first not to want it. Behind her, the black horse moved for the first time. Its head turned slowly, and in its eyes, reflections of me, but not just one version. Hundreds, thousands, all the ways I had lived, died, suffered, chosen, fallen. I don't want this, I whispered. Then end it, she said. She reached into her chest and pulled something out, a glowing brand. The same one I found in the attic all those years ago. Still hot, still alive. She offered it to me. If you take this, she said, you'll burn the bond. Sever the horse from the rider. For good. I reached for it, but before I could touch it, a voice filled the air. Low, crawling. He doesn't choose. He obeys. The ground split open. From the darkness crawled something else. A rider, but not a man. It had no skin, just muscle and tendons moving like worms in oil. Its face was a stretched-out mirror. Its eyes were where ears should have been. And in its hands, it held reins made of hair. It climbed from the earth and sat upon a third horse. Not black, not white, but rotting. The air went cold. The girl screamed. And I felt it. The void. Not just a place now. A presence. The thing behind all of it. It wanted war. The new rider looked at me and grinned. You broke the cycle, it hissed. So now the gate opens both ways. Behind it, in the crack of the earth, thousands of hooves echoed. Riders without faces. Horses without eyes. Marching forward. The girl shoved the brand into my hand, and the pain was immediate. It burned my flesh, carved into my soul, rewrote the laws of what I was. You are the last, she cried, not to ride, but to stand. The black horse came to me then, and knelt, not in obedience, in alliance, and I understood. This wasn't about fighting back. This was about sealing the door from the other side. I mounted the horse. The girl reached for my arm, and whispered something I didn't understand, but felt like a goodbye. Then she vanished, and the sky cracked open. Riders poured out, screaming, shrieking, melting into the trees, into the air, into reality. I kicked the horse forward. We rode, not away, not toward the tower, but between, the place no map could reach, the mouth of the breach itself, and I rode straight into it. The breach didn't open like a door. It peeled. Reality split down the middle like old paper soaked in oil, curling at the edges as light bled from the seam. The black horse charged into it without hesitation, its hooves making no sound, only a low hum that vibrated deep in my teeth. Inside the breach, there was no up, no down, no time, no space, only layers of memories, of fear, of hunger, and they were all watching me. The first to greet me wasn't creature. It was a voice. Hundreds of voices layered over each other, murmuring my name, mocking it, stretching it into syllables that didn't belong in any human throat. Then the faces came, familiar and wrong. My mother's face, but her eyes were sewn shut and her mouth moved independently. My grandfather, stitched into the saddle of a decayed horse, weeping blood into the void. Even the girl, older now, ancient, floating, skin made of bark, whispering warnings with a tongue that curled like smoke. The black horse slowed, not out of fear, out of respect. This was its home. We reached the center. It wasn't a place, it was an idea. A platform of light suspended in nothing, surrounded by swirling fragments of a million lost lives. Swords, toys, letters, bones, all circling like debris in the eye of a cosmic storm. And in the very center, a mirror, but it wasn't glass. It was alive. It rippled like a surface of water, but it breathed in and out like lungs just under skin. I slid off the horse, and I looked into it. It didn't show me. It showed everyone. All the riders, all the failed guardians, all the ones who tried to fight, each time the same ending. The mirror consumed them, took their forms, wore them like coats, used them to lure the next. I turned around and realized the black horse was gone. In its place was the brand, floating, glowing, waiting. I picked it up. It burned instantly, but I didn't let go, because I knew now this wasn't about sealing the breach. That was never the point. It was about binding it, making it wear me. I raised the brand and stepped into mirror. The moment it touched my skin, I was everywhere. I saw the riders rise in the old world. I saw their steeds born from sorrow, bred in war. I saw the first child sacrificed to forge the reins. I saw the tower built, not as a watchpost, but as a beacon, a lighthouse to call the lost home. And I saw the deal. One rider must always be claimed. One vessel to anchor the breach. A host, a heart, a gate, And now that was me. The voices screamed. The breach recoiled. It tried to push me out. But I burned the brand into the living mirror and whispered, I accept. Then silence. Real silence. The kind that doesn't exist in the real world. I opened my eyes. I was back on the horse. But not riding anymore. I was the horse. I was the rider. I was the gate. The void no longer pulled at me, because I had swallowed it whole. The world outside returned. Sky above, dirt below, but nothing was the same. The air tasted like endings. The trees bowed as I passed. The other riders, those twisted copies, stood in the distance, watching. And one by one, they turned their horses away, vanished. The war never started, because I ended it before it began. But peace is never free. Now, I ride the edge of every dream. I walk the cracks in every mirror. I listen for the voice of the next one who finds the reins, because the breach is sealed, but it remembers. And someday, someone will knock on its door again. And when they do, I'll be waiting. The wind never stops now. It whispers through the trees, even when there are no trees. It follows me, or maybe it's me, moving through places I used to think were real. Villages, cities, dreams. I see them all, but I don't live in them. I pass through, silent, always just outside the corner of someone's eye. A blur in a photograph, a shadow in the mirror, the outline of hooves in the dirt where no animal should be. I'm not sure how long it's been since I sealed the breach. Time behaves differently now. Sometimes I wake in a place that hasn't existed in centuries. Other times, I stand beside someone who hasn't been born yet. They don't see me, but they feel me, because I am not just a rider. I am the last gate, the last warning, the last echo of a deal made before time had a name. And I still hear it, beneath everything, the sound of knocking, gentle at first, curious, then angry, persistent. The breach hasn't forgotten. It can't. It remembers every rider, every rebellion, every soul it twisted, every oath it broke. And now that it cannot open, it sends out echoes, dreams, whispers, promises. It wants someone to replace me. I see the signs. Children born with black birthmarks shaped like saddles. Horses that refuse to die, even after bullets and fire. Mirrors fogging without breath. And worst of all, people dreaming of a tower they've never seen. When they wake up, they all say the same thing. The horse wasn't mine. It belonged to something else. Just like I did. Just like we all did. I rode once, full of fear, thinking I was escaping something. Now I ride forever, keeping others from becoming what I became. But I'm changing. Even now, sometimes I forget my name. Sometimes I hear voices calling me back. Not voices of the breach, but the girls. The one who tried to help. The one who burned herself just to warn me. She comes to me in the winds, says things like, they're building the tower again. Someone found a box. Another brand is glowing. And worst of all, he's dreaming of the horse. I try to intervene, leave signs, burn hoofprints into their dreams, shatter mirrors before they can look too long. Sometimes it works. Sometimes they listen. But sometimes they ride anyway. And when they do, I have to go to them, take the form they understand. A stranger in a dark coat, a horseman on the hill, a figure staring from the forest edge with no eyes. And I whisper, dismount, before it's too late. But it's always too late, because once you take the reins, you're no longer you. You're part of it. And one day, even I won't remember why I ride. I'll just be another warning carved into folklore, another horror story told around firelight, a myth, a curse, a rider with no face. But for now, while I still remember, while I still have enough of myself left, I'll ride the edge of every nightmare. I'll be the line between real and too late, because the breach is patient. And when it finds another, it will whisper the same lie it told me. You're not the first. You won't be the last. And the horse was never yours.